Welcome back to the Coaches Unscripted podcast. I'm your host, Trey Belcher. With me, as always, my tag team partner, Corey Smallwood. How's it going, Corey?
It's going well today. Trey, how are you?
Everything's good, man. Everything's good. Big show today. Lots of excitement down here in Danville for our guest today. Joining us on the show is Danny Hultzen. Danny is the manager of pitching for the Chicago Cubs. He was a 3-time All-American at the University of Virginia. He was the second overall pick in 2011 for the Seattle Mariners. He made his major league debut in 2019 with the Cubs. Ladies and gentlemen, Danny Hultzen. Welcome in, Danny. Thanks so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this.
Yeah. So, like I said, everybody down here, lots of UVA fans down here. You know, I grew up a UVA fan. That's a lot of the reason why my colors are orange and blue. I've had so many questions, as my people always ask, hey, who's going to be on the show? And I told them you, and they start quoting me your stats. So take us through your time at UVA, how it shaped you, how you grew, how it prepared you to take the next step in your baseball career.
Yeah, that's a great question. I could spend hours and hours talking about that. I can still to this day, other than meeting my girlfriend, that's the best thing that's ever happened to me is going to UVA. And, I guess a good place to start is just when I committed there. I was a junior in high school, and, growing up in Bethesda, Maryland, UVA was always the school that had unbelievable academics, a great reputation, and a solid baseball program. At the time, it was a program that was growing. All of those things impacted my decision to go there. All in all, it was a great combination of athletics and academics, which was important to me. So when I first got there, I was this shy young kid that didn't really know what was going on. I was excited to play Division I baseball, but I wasn't really secure in myself or my capabilities. And as that freshman year started and got some playing time and I got around some guys and I started pitching well, I kind of grew more and more confident in who I was. That lessons like that transcended both on the field and off the field. Looking back on it, those were tremendous lessons that I still keep with me to this day. So that got better and better as the years went on at UVA. It was an unbelievable experience. I learned so much there about not only being a good baseball player, but a good person. And I talk with my buddies that I went to school with about the things that we learned there. And a lot of it had nothing to do with baseball. It was honestly just being a good man, being a good person, being accountable, being truthful, working hard, being diligent. All of those values that were instilled on us were good for baseball, but they're even better for being a person. And I think that's the thing that resonates with all of us that went through that program. Yeah. And like I was saying before, I grew up a lot as a person. I grew up a lot as a baseball player, and it's definitely one of the best decisions I've ever made. That my experience there was invaluable.
That's one of the biggest takeaways with sports in general. Trey and myself, we deal with a lot of parents who put their kids in sports, and a lot of times they're living vicariously through their kids. And my kid's going to go play Division I. My kid's going to go pro. And they're missing the most important aspect of sports, and that's what it can teach you for after the sport is over. And you just touched on that, and that's such a huge thing that parents really need to understand, is that the likelihood of them going in, and believe you me, we've worked together for a long time. The fact that you got drafted in 11 and it was years after that before you made the major league debut. Some never get that opportunity. The struggle, the fortitude, the resiliency, all the things that sports teaches you is the most important part about playing sports.
I agree. Yeah, that resilient attitude was something that stuck with me after I left the UVA program. And I think you're absolutely right. It's something that sports teaches you, whatever sport you're in. I remember one of the lessons that we always was pounded on us at school was just be where your feet are and control what you can control. When I was out of UVA and dealing with a bunch of shoulder injuries, which unfortunately happened pretty quickly in my pro career, I always focused on what I could do that day to get better and get healthier. There were times where I'd stray and think about, oh man, I'm never going to be the same again. I'm never going to be able to throw again. But I knew that I wanted to do this. I knew that I had the capabilities, and I knew I had the resources. I was surrounded by unbelievable people that were going to help me through that journey. And that lesson of being where your feet are. Coach McMullen, he said it all the time at practice, and it was just focusing on what you could do that day and not worrying about too far in the future, but focusing on what is in front of you. That was such a valuable lesson that, dealing with 2-pound dumbbells and rubber bands and all that, it was like, how good can I do this today that is going to help me get healthier and achieve my goals.
Now, are you still in contact with those guys a lot? Coach O'Connor, Coach McMullen, how much do you stay in contact with those guys? I know everybody's busy, lots of movement, especially in the last few months with Coach O'Connor, but
yep.
How much do you stay in contact with those guys?
I'll text them every once in a while. Coach O'Connor has been fantastic to me over the years. Coach Kuhn, our pitching coach, is my baseball mentor. He's been unbelievable. Coach Mack, again, like Coach Mack has a reputation for being tough and hard-nosed, and he absolutely is. But getting to know him over the past few years, I guess it's not few, it's a bunch now. 2011 was my last year, but just the man that he is and everything that he does teaches you to be a good baseball player, but more importantly, it teaches you how to be a good person. And he is one of the most honest people. I'm blanking on all the good words to describe him, but he's a very genuine person. Is that what I've learned over the years, is that he may be hard, but he's very truthful, and he is, the way that he thinks and the way he goes about his business is going to make you achieve what you want to achieve.
So take us, Danny, from now being drafted number 2 overall, which is, you couldn't even really dream of that. I mean, and then it's coming true. You go to the Mariners organization, and not too long into your career, you have this shoulder injury. And it's not a little shoulder injury. It's a massive shoulder injury. Talk us through the high of the high to very shortly the low of the low.
Yeah, it was certainly a roller coaster. I got drafted 2nd overall, which was a tremendous honor and higher than I thought it was going to be. When we talked about being a young, insecure kid at that age, that was a moment where I was like, oh man, am I good enough for this? Am I as good as they think that I am? I struggled with those things tremendously when I first got drafted. And unfortunately, that mentality shifted into a very physical nature with my arm. That first year I pitched well in Double-A, and then my shoulder started to bark a little bit. Didn't want to disappoint anybody, didn't want to be the failure, didn't want to be the flop that they spent all this money on and took me in the first round and immediately get hurt. And I was trying to prove myself to other people, and that made my shoulder worse. I threw when I wasn't supposed to be throwing. I compounded all the damage that was going on in there. And when I got to a point where I couldn't lift my arm anymore, I finally had to tell him, and I felt like a failure at that point, where I was this guy that was supposed to be an all-star already, and not even spend time in the minor leagues and be in the majors and be a good major leaguer pretty quickly. I felt like a failure at that point because my arm gave out because I was trying so hard to make other people happy. And unfortunately, the damage was done. I had a rotator cuff. I tore all my rotator cuff muscles, partially or fully. I tore my capsule. I tore my labrum. I tore it all. And they were unbelievably helpful in doing their best to help me recover from that. I tried to get that thing healthy, and unfortunately had to have a second surgery a couple of years after the first one. And that insecurity was way better going through all of that process. I learned the hard way that you cannot try to make other people happy. You cannot try to live to these lofty expectations that most of them are made up, honestly. Mm-hmm. Someone can compliment you and say, this guy's really good, but then in your own head say, oh, I have to be even better than that. I have to do this, I have to do that, just to really prove them right. So after that second surgery, I didn't really have any other options to live up to any expectations because I had 2 pretty catastrophic shoulder surgeries, and there was no guarantee that I'd be able to throw a ball again. So at that point, I had a really good self-realization that I need to do the things the right way and not try to live up to other people's expectations. And honestly, going back to after the second surgery, the contract with the Mariners, the timing of it actually worked out well because I was able to go back to school and finish up. And Coach O'Connor was there, Coach Kuhn was there, Coach Mack was there, and most importantly, Brian McGuire, our trainer, was there. And he rehabbed me. He got me healthy again, and would never have gotten to where I was without his help. So I'd go to school and help out with the team as a student coach, and BMAC and I would do our rehab, and I had this awesome reset when I was back at school. I was no longer the guy that was trying to live up to any expectations. I was the guy that was playing because he loved it and played because he wanted to pitch in the major leagues. So thankfully I was able to sign with the Cubs after fully rehabbing and got to pitch a little bit, mostly in Arizona that year after I signed, just trying to get my shoulder healthy. Pitched a little bit in AAA at the end of the year, and then the next year, the Cubs are a fantastic organization on many levels. And from my experience as a player there, they were very, very clear that, like, hey man, we know you have a messed up shoulder, and we want you healthy. Let's do everything we can to get you healthy. We're not expecting you to go out there and pitch 200 innings. We want as many innings as we can out of a healthy Danny. And that was a fantastic mindset, because I didn't have these pressures on me to be ready for opening day or be ready for the major leagues immediately. So that following year in 2019 was rehabbing mostly in Arizona. Once I was healthy and ready to rock, I went to AAA for a while. And then in September of that year, I got to pitch in the major leagues, which is a dream come true. It was the culmination of all that hard work and all the people that helped me get through the rehab process. And it was a dream come true. I can't even putting it into words. I've been asked that. I've talked about that a bunch, but I haven't found the words to say how amazing that was. And then moving into that, after that, I unfortunately started having shoulder issues again. And by that time, I was ready to move on. And thankfully, the Cubs were willing to let me work for them, and been working for them since 2020 in couple various roles, and I get to have the perspective of the guy that went through all this stuff and the mistakes I made and the good things that worked out for me, and trying to instill that onto our current guys. And our overall pitching development structure has been very, very gratifying.
Yeah, that was definitely a big thing that I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
Was how your experiences, especially the tough times, had you been at the highest of the highs in college and then had a tough road, still battled back, made it to the bigs, and how you can impart those lessons, and especially the non-sporting things, because so many of the things that you talked about there were just very human emotions and human conditions, and how your experiences have helped you so much to be able to share your experiences with the guys that are coming up, so that they might not have to go through some of the things that you went through, some of the mental side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think what it comes down to is in the sports world, I think it's very common and detrimental for guys to identify themselves with their sport. So I was Danny Hultzen, the baseball player, and Danny Hultzen, the guy that was supposed to be this, and the guy that was supposed to do this. And I didn't have any of those human values that were my own. They were other people's. They were trying to live up to all these expectations. And we see that a lot of times in these guys that the Cubs or anybody else takes, that, or any other sport for that matter, is that their entire identity and value is based in a sport that they oftentimes have little control over. So the way that I like to phrase it is just caring less. And by that I mean you're caring about the right things. You're caring about how you go about your business, how you treat other people, the work that you put in to achieve your goals. You're caring less about what other people think. You're caring less about the results, that the day-to-day results of things that may or may not go your way. There's been a handful of guys that I've said that to, and hopefully that's resonated with them. Is like you can see them on the mound just freaking out over every ball that they throw, every mistake that they make. That compounds itself over time with just with frustration and just mentally draining yourself. And it's like, dude, you're never not gonna care enough, but you can very easily care too much about this stuff. And it doesn't take away from your work ethic. It doesn't take away from how you go about the way you prepare, but it does alleviate a lot of those pressures that you have that are within yourself and maybe coming from other sources. But that ability to focus on what matters and put everything you can into those things is what matters the most. And for me personally, that was an experience that I learned the hard way. I really cared about what other people thought. I really cared about being the guy that everyone thought I was supposed to be. But once I let go of that and just prepared to the best of my abilities and let the outcomes come as they are, not only did I play better, but I was healthier and just felt better. And that's so that level of not caring is a fun way to send the message to just focus on what you can.
And that's amazing to hear from you. And you get to work with people at the highest level, and yet we're seeing at the high school level a burnout rate like we've never seen before. And I think it's because of that. They feel pressure to please everyone else, that they lose the fun in the sport, the joy of the sport, because I have to make varsity. I have to do what my parents, I have to do with the community. I have to live up to the coach's expectation. And at the end of the day, it's like, do you even like playing the sport anymore? And it's hard for them to enjoy it because there are all of these external pressures or external valuations of them. And that's hard. And I think you said it very eloquently, that they could just care less about what other people think and find that love of the sport again. They'll have much more fun doing it.
I agree. Those downstream outcomes of, if you were to be this guy that did all these things that you're supposed to do, or that you want to do, those take care of themselves when you focus on the things that help achieve that. That's working hard and trying to get better every single day, and understanding that there's ebbs and flows to development. There's going to be times where you're riding high and things are going well, and there's times where the results aren't there. When those results aren't there, that's when the pressure starts to really, really mount and conflate with these values that you originally started with, right? If I love this because I play because I love this. I play because it's fun. I play because my family does it and something that we can bond over. I play to help my community, whatever it is. That gets lost when you focus and care too much about the outcomes that are oftentimes out of your control. You can go out there and hit a ball hard, or run the fastest route that you can on the football field, but the ball's not thrown to you, or the circumstances that are out of your control that impact those, but don't impact the way that you prepare and the way you go about it. Those are the things that I want people to focus on instead of the outcomes that provides.
It's funny how no matter what it is we're talking about, whether it's youth sports, major leagues, football, anything, it always boils down to the psychology of it. It's always here, no matter no matter what you're talking about. It always boils down to the very basic human psychological things. You talk about process goals versus outcome goals, and just focusing on the little things that you can control and let things fall where they may. And you talk about burnout, and especially with kids, and we talk about baseball. I was a marginal Division III player, but I got burned out on it just from playing so much. And with baseball, you play so many games, and now the kids play so many games. They're 10, 11 years old, and they're playing 100 games a year every weekend. Like, it's, how can they not burn out at some point? How can they not deal with these things? And at that age, they're not equipped to handle those psychological issues. They're not equipped to understand that this is just a game and it's fun and it should be fun. And ultimately, whether you win or you lose this game 10 years from now, it's not going to matter and you're not going to remember it.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually, and that's another thing that I really try to instill on some of the, the players that I get to talk with, is having this short-term mindset versus a long-term mindset. And especially at the minor league level, where your path to the major leagues is going to be years. And understanding that the short-term outcomes and the short-term viewpoints of having to do well today and having to do this today and not having the full scope in mind is so important. I resonate a lot with that, with the health side of things. Was like, during all the times where I was rehabbing, there was times where my arm felt terrible, and I was like, oh man, I'm not going to make it. I'm never going to be healthy because my arms felt like crap for the past couple of days. Especially after that second surgery and having that time at UVA where you expand those time horizons of what health is and what the path to being back on the field really is. It's way longer than it is for anything else, really, especially depending on an injury. Guys that get down in dumps and get really frustrated about not feeling good or not performing in the short term, you're never going to remember that. You may remember some terrible outings, and, twisting your ankle really bad or whatever it is. But having that understanding that you're not going to remember this or care about it and even if you do remember, you're probably not going to care about it.
Right.
But that is so valuable. And I would like it's easier said than done. I totally understand that. But that constant reaffirmation of just understanding that things take time and things aren't always going to go your way all of the time, but it's that long-term scope that we need to focus on is so valuable.
So how was your transition? So you get out of the playing days, moving over to the coaching side of it, just from the actual not being in uniform. How was that different to see the game, but not be in the game?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the benefits and potential downfalls of playing sports is that you get immediate feedback on what you're doing, right? If you go and try something new, if you want to change a pitch and you change a grip, you can throw it, and if it looks good and performs well, like you instantly know that it's a good thing, right? When I got out of that and didn't have those instant feedback loops, that was weird. That was really, really difficult to get around, and it goes back to those long-term and short-term things, or mindset, I should say. Working in baseball, there's things that I try to do that may or may not work. We won't know if they're going to work for weeks, months, potentially years, versus on the field, you say, I'm going to try this. Did it work? Did I get a pitch well? Did I give up runs? No. So let's change it up. Or yeah, it did work. Let's keep moving with it. A lot of what we do on the office side does not have that type of feedback, and it's a weird adjustment playing baseball for so long and having some of those answers right in front of you and more quickly received. That transition is still kind of difficult times. Being able to be a part of the game has been so gratifying, and like I was talking about earlier, those lessons that I learned through my experiences and getting to help the guys that may be struggling with something similar, or I can see we as an organization see going down a similar path of struggling, not necessarily exactly what I went through, but those themes could be similar. Having guys not make those same mistakes is very, very beneficial, just as helping somebody that's going through tough times, and it can be beneficial for overall development as these guys progress through the minor leagues. So that transition has been difficult, but it's been very gratifying for all those reasons, and getting to help people that are going through something similar that I went through and helping them through that process has been a pretty special feeling.
You mentioned it earlier, Danny, when you tied your identity with the sport. Right? It defined you. And I felt the same way when I was playing soccer and had my injury. And I went through this, like, what is my new identity? Another thing with playing sports is there's that adrenaline rush. There's that euphoria that you get when you're on the mound or when you're on the pitch or whatever it might be, whatever sport you're playing. And now you don't have that. So what are you doing for that? I don't even know what word, that excitement, that adrenaline rush. What's your outlet now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've talked about this with some of my buddies. One of them lives out in Colorado and says that he gets a similar feeling by trying to snowboard down a mountain as fast as he can, and he sets his times and all that. And that competitive fire that we all loved as players is difficult to replicate outside of the sport. I think when I think about it in the most tangible sense is I love fishing and putting some sort of stake on the line. Like, I have to catch this fish. I have to use this fly or lure. I have to do this. That gets that fire going in your belly a little bit. But I don't think, for me at least, I haven't found anything that can exactly replicate that. I think as we get older, those values start to shift away from competitiveness and trying to beat somebody into just the values you have as a person. And a lot of guys have family and kids, and they want to do whatever they can to help them grow and help them develop into good people, and that's the competitive edge that that can fulfill that a little bit. But I was having a good conversation with a buddy of mine about trying to find that next thing that matches what we had as players, and I haven't found it, and I'm okay with not finding it. I think when we talk about trying to exactly replicate that, and you force it on trying to be this or that or whatever, you're running circles. I don't think you're going to find it. But I do have inclinations of trying to run a marathon, and that might be a little bit of a competitive thing for me, but we'll see about that one. See how the old body handles
Danny,
that.
this is God. Don't do it.
But yeah, that is a great question. I know a lot of guys struggle with that, is trying to find
Yeah,
that fire that they got as baseball players.
I knew how
And
passionate you were about fishing, and that's kind of the cat and mouse. The pitcher batter is very similar to what fishing, or as I love hunting. I like the cat and mouse, the strategy behind it, more than the actual catching of the fish, right? There's a lot into it, and so I get similar. It's never the same, but that's kind of that excitement. But it's the strategy. It's the cat and mouse aspect of it that I really enjoy.
Definitely. Trying to relate baseball into fishing, that like they're both puzzles that you got to put together, right? There's, what can I do to be the best pitcher? I got to do this. How can I get this out? I should probably throw these types of pitches, should attack them in this part of the zone. Fishing, it's what fly should I use? Where the fish going to be? They're all just puzzle pieces you're trying to put together, and they're very different environments, but equally challenging, and for me, equally gratifying, or pretty close to equally gratifying.
Yeah.
So this is stepping back, and I've been asked specifically about this question. All right, so we're going back to college now. The South Carolina game in the College World Series. Take me through that story.
Yeah. So that was that was an elimination game. We had to win or we were done. And I was ready to pitch. I was coming off a short rest a little bit, but I was ready to go. That day, it was coming out of both ends, whether it's nerves or food poisoning or something both. I honestly don't really remember the game a lot because I was in a tough mental space. But yeah, I went out there and saw the catcher's glove and threw everything I had at it, and I did it for as long as I possibly could. Unfortunately, I came out after a few innings. The going back and forth from the dugout and slow and draining myself, and I wasn't feeling great. So all of those things unfortunately led to a short outing, but I don't remember a ton about that game, honestly, just because I was in a lot of pain, like just physical pain. But that was a pretty wild experience to go out there thinking that I had nothing. Towards the end of the season, arm feeling fine, but not quite all the way there. Stuff coming out of both ends, and thinking like, man, this could be tough. But it was a good 3 innings that I pitched, and then we played. I think it was a 14-inning game or something like that. Unfortunately, that's how our season ended, but. Yeah, that was a pretty wild experience.
Yeah, no kidding. Striking out 8 in 3 innings and not remembering it.
Yeah, it was all a blur. It was all a blur.
I'll have to look it up. There's one of the wildest stories in Major League pitching history. This was like back in the 50s, and a guy took LSD and pitched. Doc Ellis. Okay, yeah. You know the story. Unbelievable. Everybody look that story up. He showed up the next day to pitch, and they're like, no, dude, you pitched yesterday. He had no idea.
Yeah, Doc, he took LSD and threw no hitter, which honestly kind of goes back to like what we were talking about earlier about caring so much. Is you hear about these games where people perform well because they're sick or not feeling well or potentially on drugs, but you're removing the things that are hurting you. You're just totally removing the pressures that you put on yourself and all these external noises that are just naturally going to come upon you, and all you care about is just what do I got to do to get out of here? Like, I'm going to give it what I got, and that's kind of it. Like, I'm out. It's a weird feeling, but those guys that are sick, like the Jordan flu game is the prime example of it. I do remember that feeling pitching in that game. I don't remember a ton of it. I just remember thinking like nothing mattered other than just getting through this. And I pitched well and was throwing hard, and that was probably one of the nastiest I've ever been. And maybe some of that was just because I was totally free and just throwing what I had at the glove and was okay with what was the outcomes of it.
But that's such a important point. And we all start to figure it out either right at the end of our time playing or just beyond our time playing. And you look back at those things and you said, man, if I could have just gotten out of my own head, I could have done so much more. I could have accomplished so much more. So if there's anything that anybody takes away from this, it's get out of your own head. You have the talent, you have the ability, you have the capability. Just let it be. and you'll
Absolutely.
be amazed how much you can accomplish. And I think the same thing. Little pieces in my career. I remember one game specifically. I came in to pinch hit. The pitcher was throwing a first pitch inside fastball every batter. I was charting pitches before I came in. Every pitch, first pitch inside inside fastball, every single time. I came up. What do you think the first pitch was?
Outside slider.
Inside fastball. No, inside fastball. It was going to be an inside fastball. But what did I think? I thought, what if he does something different?
Yeah.
So I took it. It's always going to be what it's going to be. Just even if it wasn't, even if he threw a change up in the dirt, I'm swinging like it's an inside fastball because that's what it's been every time. Worst case scenario, it's strike one. Next pitch. Make the adjustment then.
Yep.
But just get out of your own head and just let things be.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a great way to say it. Is get out of your own way, and how powerful that is. And I think to some degree you have to be in your own way and go through some trials and go through some hardships to truly understand that. And I think you're totally right. When many people realize that when they're done playing or towards the end of their careers, maybe because they've had the experiences of just bogging themselves down with all this BS about external pressures and things that don't matter nearly as much as you think you did as they do. But yeah, that lesson of just the biggest enemy is often yourself, and it's very easy to get in your own way of overthinking and trying too hard and trying to do too much. I talk with my buddies a lot about this, and you look at like young kids that don't have any of that, and like that's the mentality that a lot of guys should have, is just play like a kid. I know like some major leaguers that think like that. They go out there and play, and they're certainly more in tune with what's going on and their skills and all that. But that understanding of just you're playing a game and nothing else matters, and blocking that stuff out, that is so valuable. And it just goes back to what we're talking about, is playing for the reasons that you want to play and having fun and doing it because you love it, and trying your best to block out all the other stuff that comes along with that.
Now tell us, Danny, because when we watch pro sports, we see the entertainment, we see the sport happening, but there's so much that goes on behind the scenes from the organization. So from the Cubs organization, the manager of pitching, like what does that entail? Like, what's your job?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And the way that I think about it in its simplest form is I'm trying to get players better. I'm trying to make pitchers better. And that comes across as the players that we have on our own, our organization. It's what can we do to get this guy better? Do we need to change something mechanically? Do we need to change something about his pitch usage? Do we need to add a new pitch? Going into this off season, what should this guy focus on to give him the best chance at a successful 2026 season? Asking questions like that, all revolving around how can this guy get better? That's the tip of the iceberg. That's the end goal. But then the process that goes into that can get very analytical. It can get very personal. It can be a mix and match of a variety of things. But that core question of how can we get this guy better is at the forefront of everyone's mind. When it goes to the acquisition side of things, this player's at a different organization. How can we make him better? If we were to acquire him, do we need to change something mechanically? Do we need to change something about his pitch usage? Is there something in the data that suggests that we should push the development structure in this direction? Those are the kind of questions that we're always asking. And I deal with a bunch of things that, go through a very wide range of development opportunities, but everything is focused on how can we make a player better.
Now, is that the major league roster, or is that the 40-man roster? Is that all the way down through the organization? Where are you spending most of your time?
I do a little bit of everything. Most of what I do is on the player development side. So it's our own pitchers going through the system, if they're at low A or high A or the triple A, whatever it is. I'm putting in work to help them get to the major leagues. Everything revolves around getting to the major leagues, and then getting there, asking yourself, how do we get there and how do we make this guy better? So it's during the season, it's a ton of analysis on what makes this guy good, what does he struggle with, what can we work on, what are those levers that we can pull to get this guy progressing through the system faster. Most of my time is focused around that. And one of the cool things that I like to do a lot is, there's this iceberg of information, right? And figuring out ways to display information and display all this analytical stuff that is tremendously impactful and tremendously helpful. What can we show this guy that will fuel him with the best information that he needs in order to achieve his goals? So figuring out ways to visualize stuff and either avoid or give numbers and put yourself in these percentiles or this chart or these meters. Visualizing that, like using my experience as a player, is what would I have seen that would have helped? Probably wouldn't be a lot of numbers. I don't like math too much, so I'm not worried about all the probabilities and percentiles and run values. And if I needed to see something, maybe a chart or maybe just a simple message to be like, throw your fastball here, and like that be the end of it. Those simple messages and figuring out what those simple messages are and the most impactful ones, those are the puzzle pieces that we're trying to put together. Is what do we need to help this guy with? How are we going to do it? And how are we going to get him to do it? Those are the big three questions that we're trying to answer when we look at a guy's developmental path.
2 questions for you, Danny. One, your brother's also in MLB. When you
Mm-hmm.
guys get together for the holidays, do you talk shop, or do you just not bring up baseball at all? And my second question is, since you're working in baseball, can you watch baseball games and enjoy them, or do they stress you out? Is it like watching work?
Yeah. I hear you. So with my brother works for True Media, which is a data collection company that a lot of major league teams use. He does a lot of the same things that I do. Is we have this mountain of data. How do we visualize it? How do we make things intuitive? How do we make things helpful? We both talk shop. We do talk shop. It's funny because we have such good conversations about all this stuff, and then we can eliminate it and go watch a stupid movie together. So it's a black and white thing. They never cross paths, but they have very strong paths independently. So yeah, talking with him, it's the things that he works on are very similar to things that I work on. He's doing it mostly for teams. What can True Media do to help these teams access and utilize information better? Where a lot of my focus is on how can this coach look at this information and then translate it in a way that makes a player better. So we certainly do cross paths a lot. Those struggles and gratifying moments are definitely intertwined. We're just doing it on little different scales, and they're really insightful conversations, because I think what the biggest struggle is, how can we visualize this information in a way that's helpful? That question crosses our paths very easily all the time. So we bounce ideas off of each other sometimes. And he worked for the Pirates for a long time too, and we were both advanced scouts for the major league team. I was with the Cubs and he was with the Pirates for a few years. And the struggles and fun things that came along with those jobs, that we've bonded over those, because those are some interesting scenarios that we got ourselves in. But as far as watching baseball, I love watching baseball. The older I've gotten, the fewer sports I've watched. Like I don't watch a ton of football. I don't watch a ton of basketball. I certainly watch playoffs of anything and everything, because that's the most exciting. But I love watching baseball. I look at it differently now from my experiences as a player and as working on the front office side. And a lot of it has to do with randomness. I think at one point in my life, when I was a pitcher and a guy gave up a bloop single that lost the game or whatever, it's like, oh, that guy failed. That guy did not have a good outing. But now I look at it like, well, if he elicited really weak contact, he threw a good pitch, he threw it in the right situation, and it just happened to fall, like, gotta love it. Like that, you did what you were in control of. And looking at things through that scope, I certainly look at baseball that way now. Certainly from the pitcher's perspective, I have a good sense of this guy. Is he making good pitches? Is he getting lucky? Is he really pitching well? Is he putting the pitches where he wants to, and they have a good approach on him, or they're getting lucky? Watching games where kind of along those same lines, where a guy's nasty, he's throwing hard, he's locating his pitches, and he's giving up 8 singles and 4 runs. It's like, he's doing what he can do. Like, in a previous life, I would say this guy sucks right now, but he's doing everything he can, and things just aren't going his way. It's just that randomness element that I've learned being on the front office side, certainly important in our way of analyzing pitchers and evaluating pitchers. And now I look at games like that, which is still enjoyable to me.
Yeah.
Well, Danny, I know we got to get you out of here. You got to go pick somebody up that's going to be far more important than us. But we thank you so much for joining us on the Coaches Unscripted podcast. We hope today's stories have inspired and empowered you guys. Please connect with us on Instagram at Coaches Unscripted Podcast. Give us a like, subscribe, comment, and share to continue the conversation. Stay updated for future episodes. Danny, we thank you so much for joining us. This has been awesome. For Danny Hultzen, Corey Smallwood, I'm Trey Belcher. Keep coaching from the heart and building strong communities.